When it comes to playing video games, one of my favourite genres is the roguelike genre. A set of runs that you play over and over again, and each time you get different upgrades that you can use at any kind of base system that allows you to do better on your next run with some kind of end goal. The reason I like playing these games is they're incredibly replayable, and it actually feels like I'm getting something that's worth my money. Unlike Call of Duty, for example, where I'll buy the game for 60 quid and then be like, oh, there's a 2 hour long campaign on this. Wow, that's really helpful. And then I go into the online and it's just a bunch of sweats. Well, what's going to help me with that? Microtransactions. So this is why I play roguelikes. They're single player, they don't actually require any usual cooperative depending on what the game is. But still, I like it because I spend maybe about 20 quid on one and I'll get hours and hours out of this. I'm not ashamed to admit that I have like hundreds of hours in Risk of Rain 2. There is no issue with this. It's because it's incredibly replayable. You know what's even better? I don't have any of the DLC for that game. Risk of Rain 2, I don't have any DLC because I just haven't bought it yet, but I've still got hundreds of hours in it. Dead Cells, no DLC, I've still got hundreds of hours in it. Roguelike games are good because you can play them over and over again, multiple times, and you can't really get bored. And the thing is, they're always usually getting updated. But people often think, what actually makes a roguelike? There's so many subgenres of roguelike to actually look into, and they're all very different from each other. The games I previously mentioned are relatively different from each other, and all have different ways of their systems working, and the way they play, and what you enjoy is entirely up to your preference, but I'm going to be diving in to the different roguelike subgenres today. First up on the list, we have normal turn-based roguelikes. These are you with a character that starts at level 1, that goes into dungeons that are randomly generated each time you go in, and you'll get upgrades usually each time you die by some kind of permanent currency that carries over. They're pretty good most of the time. The only issue is they do get repetitive and pretty simple. Basically, I think like the phrase, once you played one turn-based roguelike, you've played all of them. They don't they don't really deviate from each other that much. They might use like different items, but you're still gonna have here's the food that heals you, here's your sword, here's your axe, but instead of a sword, it's a big flashy laser weapon or something. They're all very similar. They don't do anything to actually innovate, which is probably why they were the first. You can't really innovate on something that was the first. Usually the graphics are relatively simple, so it's pixel art and stuff, so that isn't really your style, then don't get into it, really. Tons of people don't like turn-based combat, so that might not be a reason you want to get into it. That's a reason you probably don't want to get into it, because I know tons of people want the quick, fast-paced stuff, which we'll get into later. But yeah, if I was going to suggest one big thing, is that none of them have real particular story at all. But because they're usually a lot older, story wasn't as big as the thing, because they didn't have enough storage to put them on hard drives and things. However, if I was going to suggest one game out of any turn-based roguelike, you got to play literally any Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. If you don't like Pokemon, then you'll probably still like them anyway. I think they're great, personally. They have a good story. They have that turn-based combat still, but you can speed it up, and you can feel that proper progression, and it feels really nice. The items are interesting, and the games are pretty accessible too. They're on the Switch, the 3DS, the DS, and the GBA. They're good, but again, the turn-based combat might be a bit of a stickler for some people. It depends on what you want, really. But we'll get into some more fast-paced stuff now. Now we're going into a more new-fledged subgenre that's emerged recently due to Vampire Survivors, the Survivors like, or the Reverse Bullet Hell. Now these, I wouldn't actually call these roguelikes. I don't really know why they labelled themselves as roguelikes, but I'm going to put these in here anyway. They have a permanent upgrade system, and your character gets reset to level 1 each time, so I suppose that makes it. The maps are slightly randomly generated, I guess, and the items you get this time are random, so yeah, sure, it's a roguelike. These games usually involve you fighting hordes of enemies. You start off weak, but slowly you get tons of more weapons, and then you can use passive items which will evolve these weapons to make you do ridiculous things. Now, these games aren't actually as popular on PC and consoles. They're actually a more mobile exclusive thing, which I find quite interesting, actually. I I think that's cool. I think if you're gonna play one, play Vampire Survivors. It's good. It's free on mobile, and it's cheap as hell on Steam if you want it. It's good. The DLCs are also cheap as hell as well, so Vampire Survivors is good. It's got a Castlevania feel to it, if you like Castlevania and that. But I'm making this a shorter section because they're not really roguelikes, but I thought I'd put them on here anyway. 20 Minutes to Dawn is good too, but that comes under shooter as well, I guess. They're all right. There are some really crappy ones on there as well, but some are just like really niche ones on the Google Play Store that are pretty arse, actually. Stick to Vampire Survivors, basically, if you're going to play any Survivors like, which is what they're being called now. Anyway, we're going to move on to something that's definitely more roguelikey, I guess. Now we're moving on to my favourite genre of roguelikes, action roguelikes. These are usually side-scrolling or top-down for the two that I'm going to talk about here. They're definitely not turn-based, they're very fast-paced, and usually require you dodging or rolling out of combat using melee weapons most of the time. It will get you acquiring new skills, then getting some kind of permanent currency, dying, and then going back to base. I believe the phrase Dead Cells uses is kill, die, learn, repeat. That's perfect how I describe these. Dead Cells is definitely the best. It's side scrolling. It's got tons of content in it. The weapons are awesome. But if you want a more story based one, you go with Hades. It's got that Greek god style. It's got that the cool weapons. It's got the character. It's got lots more story. It's got more personality. Dead Cells does have personality. It has those little scenes. It's got little tidbits of story. But there isn't actually much story to it. Dead Cells more for the gameplay, Hades more for the story. I'm not saying Hades gameplay is awful, it isn't. Now, I can't actually tell you how much these games are. I would, but I've forgotten, so my bad. But I don't remember them being particularly expensive. Dead Cells is like 5 DLCs that aren't particularly expensive by today's standards. And instead of supporting big money hungry AAA companies, you're supporting little indie companies who have poured their heart and soul into this. I've just thought of another roguelike that fits into this. Cult of the Lamb. Now this is one from, oh my god, 2 years ago. This did that really stab me when I heard that game was from 2 years ago. I've been playing this game for 2 years. That was just wild to me. There's a mixture of like a base building sim, this cult management sim, with a roguelike. It's an interesting mix, but it works really well. It's good. It has you managing a cult of little weird animal guys and doing like weird cult shit. And it's good fun. It's great. I love it. It's silly. So if you want to go with good gameplay, you go with Dead Cells. If you want to go with good story, you go Hades. And if you just want silly, fun shit shenanigans, you go with Cult of the Lamb. Cult of the Lamb is ridiculous. It's silly, but it's also good. The combat's good. Cult of the Lamb also has a relatively decent story, but it's basically just goofy cult shenanigans. It does not take itself seriously at all. If I tell anyone to get any kind of roguelike, I suggest any action roguelike. Action roguelikes are the best of the genre, I'd say. Anyway, that's my opinion though, so you don't really have to take me up on that. We're moving on to the next one now. The final section of this video is going to be relatively small because there are like two games that I think would fit in this genre. The biggest one being Risk of Rain 2. This is the shooter roguelike. It's a shooter and a roguelike. You shoot things, but it's randomly generated with power-ups that are permanent and shit. I don't really know how to else to explain it. That's how it works. Risk of Rain 2 is the biggest example. The game is playing in the background is a mobile game called Bloodstrike. It's almost a roguelike. The map's a bit randomly generated, and your character resets to level 1 each time you play. So technically it is. Yeah, I mean, Risk of Rain 2 is really good. As I said, I've got tons of hours in it, and I haven't got any of the DLC. It's a lovely game. The music goes super hard as well. That's another thing about roguelikes. The soundtracks are basically guaranteed to be bang on. I don't know if I have any of them in the background of this video because I want you to actually be able to hear me speak, but they're really good. Risk of Rain 2 is based in space. It has you picking any one of many survivors, which all do different things, starting a run, opening chests by killing the locals and stealing their lunch money to get cool items, and then killing more locals and stealing lunch money. This is all in game, by the way. Do not kill people in real life. Take their lunch money to go open chests that have weird space shit in. Don't do this. This is bad. Anyway, Risk of Rain 2 is great. Bloodstrike is good, but I wouldn't really say it's a roguelike. I'm just putting it in here to excuse to have it in the background because I can't be asked to do Risk of Rain 2 gameplay because transferring gameplay over from PlayStation to like my video editor is a pain in the ass, and I don't want to do that because I play most of my games on my PlayStation. So that's the only reason why there isn't Risk Raid 2 gameplay in the background, because I don't want to go nick someone else's, because that kind of feels a bit evil, honestly. I don't want to steal other people's content. I suppose I could credit them. Whatever. Risk Raid 2 is good. It's pretty cheap, and it actually goes on sale a lot, all the time. And obviously, you've got its predecessor, Risk of Rain, which is also a roguelike. It's a side-scrolling shooter, I guess. There's still shooting, and it's side-scrolling. Apart from, like, the one character in the entire game, which just has a sword. And then you got the other character that just uses its fists. It's just like, yep, there's variety. You can play whoever you want in Risk of Rain 2. But yeah, it's a good game. There's been a couple of issues recently. The new DLC's been pretty buggy and rushed, so I think I'd wait to get the new DLC. The old DLC, you could get it though, it should be fine, and the base game's still fine. Maybe give it a wait though. But yeah, Risk of Raid 2 is good. Bloodstrike, if you want to give it a shot, I made a video on it already. It did fucking awful. Hopefully this video does better. That's my note saying please like and subscribe. I don't want to beg for it at all, though. But yeah, Risk of Rain 2 is great. I've got tons of hours in it with no DLC. I love it. The first game's good too. I'd suggest, depending on what you like, choose which game you want to do. Risk of Rain 2 is 3D, has like fully rendered 3D graphics with like nice effects and stuff. Risk of Rain 2 is side-scrolling, pixel art. They do different games. They work differently. They still have one thing that's consistent between them. They have 3 set difficulties, which are like an easy, medium, and hard mode, which is drizzle, rainstorm, and monsoon, as far as I remember. But the main thing about this game is that over time, all the time you're playing, the difficulty is going up with the game's in-game timer. It's really cool. And also, I'm pretty sure the quality that you get of gear you get also goes up with the in-game timer, or it either scales with like each stage you go through. By the way, when you go through a stage, you beat your teleporter, you fight a boss, you move on to the next stage. It's a very simple gameplay loop. It's incredibly addicting, but it also has that one end goal of some big boss at the end. It's great. If you're gonna play Risk of Rain 1, you either have the original version or you have the remake Risk of Rain Returns. They're both equally good, but Risk of Rain Returns have updated graphics and whatever. It depends on your preference though, but I think I spent long enough talking about this, so yeah. This final bit here is for things that didn't fit into the other categories. So first, I'm going to put Terraria here. It technically is a roguelike, the world's randomly generated, and you also have like gear that can carry over between worlds. I just thought I'd mention it because I want to glaze Terraria. It's a really good game. I love it. And then you have Loop Hero. I don't really know how to describe this game. You're basically a hero that's like, the world's kind of been forgotten due to like an evil dude's magic, so you have to rebuild the world over time using like different items and stuff, and you go around this small map over time, but slowly you rebuild it with the stuff that buffs. And that's all. I've gone through all the ones that I can think of that are worth suggesting, so if you've made it all the way to the end, thanks for watching. If you want to see more of me, which you might or might not, you can subscribe if you want to. I'm not really going to force you to at all. I've started uploading shorts occasionally because it's the only way to actually get me to do what I want, which is actually live streaming. So hopefully I'll start doing that too. But thanks for watching. You can leave a like, you subscribe, you can do whatever, honestly, or you could just leave. I don't mind. Thanks for watching though. Bye.